Us now is Texas Department of Public Safety Lieutenant Christopher Olivarez. Lieutenant, it's always good to see you. These 15 states plan to send additional resources and law enforcement agents to help out. When those reinforcements get in place, though, will that be enough? I'm curious if there's actually any tangible asset that would alleviate the problem, or if it's truly just going to take a new White House to see change.
Well, it's definitely going to take a new White House. I mean, the only way to stop the flow of people crossing the river illegally is to have consequences and to have policies in place. But having additional support, whether it be law enforcement or National Guard, does provide value to the operation, does provide value to what we are doing for the state of Texas and for the entire country. When you have extra manpower at the river, it helps stem some of that flow, as far as illegal crossings, criminal activity, drugs, cartel members that are crossing our border. It helps to deter some of that. So any help that we can receive from other states is always going to be very, very beneficial to what we are doing for Operation Lone Star. And one thing that stood out to me yesterday, the fact that we have 25 governors, that's half of what we have, in the United States, that have an overwhelming support for what we're doing in Texas, and 15 of whom are now sending some type of law enforcement or National Guard support. So that in itself is historic for Texas. And I think what Governor Abbott's been able to do by, bringing these governors together, creating some type of partnership, that in itself is historic, and it helps us, helps the troopers on the ground, helps our National Guard soldiers as well do their job and be more effective.
Yeah, I know those reinforcements are warmly welcomed. I was looking at the latest numbers. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol just announced on Friday that they processed more than 183,000 people in July. But those numbers have fallen since the Biden administration ended Title 42. And yesterday, in this Republican delegation that we watched in Eagle Pass, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem called the southern border a war zone. Is that still a fair characterization for you? Is that still what you feel like it is?
Well, Mark, we see threats that are very significant to public safety and national security. We're seeing armed gunmen, cartel operatives that are crossing our borders. And the way we're able to detect these individuals by having cameras, by having technology. But we're seeing heavily armed individuals crossing our border, not only guiding illegal immigrants across the river, but also bringing illicit drugs or high-ranking or high-profile targets across the border. So that in itself is a threat. Also seeing the amount of drugs, fentanyl continues to be a significant threat to our country, and that continues to flow across our borders. But as far as the numbers, one thing I want the American people to understand is not to be deceived by the numbers. We're still seeing well over 5,000 to 6,000 daily encounters between ports of entry. That does not include gotaways. That does not include the number of people that are being released at the ports of entry. So you include all of those numbers together, that puts us back to where we're at pre-Title 42. So again, the numbers have not decreased. I mean, they decrease as far as what you see on paper, but people, as far as the law enforcement, National Guard, people when they're at the front lines, the numbers are much higher, and it has not slowed down. And as long as you don't have any consequences in place, people are still going to continue to cross that river.
Hey, speaking of crossing the river, we just have a few seconds left. I did want to ask you, because we're playing video of the buoy barrier. We obviously have a border crisis, but can we have real talk about that buoy for a second? It's 1,000 feet long. I mean, how successful is that when you're talking about migrants who have walked for months from Venezuela? I mean, do you wish you had seen some sort of alternate barrier instead of this?
No, I mean, this barrier is very effective. The fact of the matter is it's more effective than a border wall, because this is actually the first line of defense at the river. And when we look at a humane and more controlled process, there's nothing humane, there's nothing illegal about individuals crossing a river to seek asylum. That's illegal in itself. So to make it much safer and to redirect that flow to a port of entry, that is humane. And that's what we're trying to do. The barrier is doing its job. There has not been a single crossing directly in front of that barrier. There has not been a single drowning around that barrier. So yesterday we kind of dispelled.
Well, didn't they find 2 bodies? They just didn't know if it was the buoys that caused it. Didn't they find 2 bodies near it?
Right. So all that was inaccurate information. Again, that's what we cleared up yesterday with the governors. The bodies that did drown, they drowned further upriver away from the barrier with the current of the river. They floated against the barrier. So, of course, some of the media was very quick to jump to conclusions and to perceive that the barrier itself caused the drownings. But there's no attachments. There's no hidden secrets about the barrier for it to cause any drownings or any harm to any individual. So those drownings did not occur because of the barrier. Drownings have been occurring from day one since this border crisis first started. There's close to 2,000 illegal immigrants that have lost their lives, and not once has there been any outrage about those individuals that have lost their lives, including children. So So again, we were able to dispel some of those allegations, clear it up. The governor's had a clear perspective of how that buoy works, and it's been very effective.
All right. Lieutenant Olivarez, thanks so much as always for hopping on with us on Morning in America. Good to see you. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.